Isn't it ironic that in this day and age where we have the Twitter, the Facebook, the Instagram, the social media, the Snapchat, the hashtags, that people still want to work together and people still want to meet in person? Isn't that amazing? Yeah? I mean, did you all meet somebody new today that was interesting to you? Okay, only 2 people. Great. Oh, me. Thank you. Hi, Grace. So awesome. Great. How many freelance meeting planners do we have here are looking for work, who are looking to expand their business and work? Okay, only like 3 or 4 people. Leslie Short, who's only going to be here for another hour or so, can use some additional help, some smart minds, some brains for the amazing work she's doing. So before she goes, if you're interested in seeing Leslie, working with Leslie, I would say hi to her and smile real big and, buy her some chocolate or something like that. So see what happens. So one person's already getting up. And if Leslie's not available, you can see me. 10% Leslie's good? That's cool? 5%. Oh, 5. She's hard bargaining. Wow. That's Shark Tank stuff. Okay, fine. So good. So let's move on. Did you have a good time at the last session? Did you learn? Awesome. It's amazing that I think that there are going to be and there are disruptions in the event industry. I think this is a given. How many would like to know what are some of those potential disruptions that we all should be aware of in our industry? How many are interested in that? Good. Well, we have the person today to talk about that, Howard Givner, 25 years of industry experience overall. This is a man for sure who knows what he's talking about. He recently joined an organization, Grassroots, as managing director, and they help people produce events. Broad range of strategic meetings management experience. And I must also say, interesting to me, he's the founder, was the founder and executive director of the Event Leadership Institute. So I think this guy definitely knows what he's talking about. And anyone that's won over 30 industry awards has to be very, very smart. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please give a warm round of applause and join me in welcoming Howard Givner as he's going to drop some science on us. You can clap to the music if you want. There you go. One more round of applause. Howard Givner.
I didn't know there would be walk-on music, so that's not a bad song. All right, so this is part of like a 45 to 60-minute presentation, so I boiled it down to as much as possible, and I'm going to go a little bit fast. All right, so what we're going to go through in this 15 minutes is defining what disruption is, why people and companies get disrupted, and then we're going to go through 4 different categories of disruption in terms of economic, political or security, technology, and experiential. So part 1, defining a disruption. So I want to just be clear, this is a term that gets used a lot and quite frankly overused and a little bit inappropriate. A disruption is not just a new technology. So here are 2 examples of being able to book your own room on Hilton's app and being able to open your hotel room with your phone. Very cool. Maybe they'll be disruptive. I'm not sort of seeing exactly where and how they're going to dramatically change what we do. So I don't know that I would put that in a disruptive category. It's obviously open to interpretation, but I think it's important to know that disruptions don't have to be technologically driven. So last year, Unilever paid $1 billion to buy Dollar Shave Club. Why? There's no technology in shaving. I mean, it's basically, a razor, but what Dollar Shave Club did, their disruption was their distribution model, sending razors by mail and making it into a subscription business. And so you see a lot of corporations now are funding these, quote, innovation labs in-house so that they don't have to pay $1 billion for a competitor so that they could create their own version of Dollar Shave Club. So think about that when someone brings up disruption and you think it's only technology. The term got a lot of traction in 1997 by a book by Clayton Christensen called The Innovator's Dilemma, and the term was actually disruptive innovation. Again, it's not necessarily technology. Disruptions can fall into a bunch of different categories. It could be an innovation, a demographic trend, a business trend, and most importantly, they can be threats or they could be opportunities. So what I want to focus on here is what the impact of one of those things might be on the industry we're in, the industry your company might be in if you're in-house, your company specifically, and your job. So let's talk about why companies or individuals get disrupted. So this looks like a complicated chart. If I had more time, there's animations kind of go one at a time. But basically, you get disrupted for one of 2 reasons. Either a failure of imagination or you don't have the guts to react to it. So on the failure of imagination side, either you don't see the disruption coming, or you see it coming, but you don't think it's going to have the impact that it will. If you see it coming and you see it's going to have an impact, if you don't have the guts to act on it and to prevent it and make the changes you need to make to your own business to avoid being disrupted, that's the no guts category. Okay, so let's go through a couple of examples. The iPhone was invented basically 10 years ago, I think this month, right? Steve Ballmer, the former CEO of Microsoft, the famous quote saying the iPhone's not going to get any market share, none, because basically there was no keyboard. This is one of those things that he wishes he could take back, because I guarantee you it's in lots of business schools elsewhere. This is a lack of imagination disruption, right? Netflix came and ate Blockbuster's lunch. Netflix actually came to Blockbuster and got an opportunity, offered them an opportunity to buy them for $50 million, and they passed. Blockbuster's obviously gone, and Netflix is worth over $50 billion. That could be a lack of imagination, or it could also be a lack of guts because Blockbuster wasn't willing to throw away all their retail stores. This one is one of my favorites because at the end of the day, Sony should have created the iPod and the iTunes store because they had the music, they had the content, and they had the devices, but Apple did. And the irony of all this is Spotify came along and disrupted Apple by creating the streaming services. And Apple had to pay $3 billion to buy Beats headphones, basically, so that they could get their own streaming service. One quick thing I just want to share is that disruptions don't have to be dramatic shifts. So there's a good book called Blue Ocean Strategy, where they talk about either raising, reducing, creating, or eliminating something in business that opens up blue waters, so where there's less competition. Their case study is Cirque du Soleil. One thing they raised was music and choreography. They reduced 3 rings to 1. They added a storyline, and they eliminated the expensive animals. Last month, I think, Ringling Brothers actually closed their circus, which had been the market leader for, I don't know, over 100 years. So it's actually a telling story. And if anyone's been to SoulCycle, that's a perfect blue ocean example. They eliminated the weights and the giant gyms, the exercise machines. They cut back on the locker rooms. They created a seat reservation system, which was pretty innovative, and they overall raised the quality of classes and built a sense of community. So you want to be thinking like, where is the SoulCycle that's coming for my business or our industry? So that's the overview of how you might get disrupted. Let's go through a couple of examples. All right, so we'll start with economics. The mergers and acquisitions and consolidation that's been going on is going to have a pretty big impact. There's a bunch of other M&A activity, but these are sort of 2 of the big ones. I want to just share one example. This is the signature line of one person in New York who is now in charge of marketing Marriott Marquis and the New York Sheraton Times Square. Okay, for those of you that do the big events, those are 2 of the 4 big ballrooms in New York City. The other 2 are the Hilton and the Hyatt. If you don't think that that changes the dynamics and that's disruptive for one person or one company to now control half of the 4 largest ballrooms, you're delusional. And I'll tell you, I've sat with the people at Hilton and Hyatt, and I'm not totally sure they fully get the impact of how this is going to affect them. Another thing that we haven't really talked about is user conferences, right? So this is a relatively new phenomenon. I mean, it started in the tech space, but now it's expanding everywhere. This is basically a technology that people subscribe to that hosts their own conference. And they have a tremendous advantage on a couple of fronts. Number one, they have access to incredible user data, right? So they see all the complaints people have. They see the features people are using more than others. They get to see what the complaints are. They get to tap into that data, and then they can design content and the experience around that. The second thing is, they've got all these people that are paying money that are actively invested in that software and their technology, and they're more likely to attend a conference. So if you don't think that's having an impact, next week, CVent Connect, which is a user conference, and the PCMA Education Conference are overlapping. There is a limited bandwidth of people's ability to attend an industry conference, and they're not going to be able to go to both of these. And if you look at how CVent Connect has done, they've basically doubled in size over 2 years. They're very organized, and they're not any different than any other user conference. So I think user conferences are going to have a dramatic advantage over association events or other industry events. This is probably the biggest one, is the recession risk. We are currently in the 3rd longest Expansion, economic expansion since World War II. These expansions do not last forever, and we are getting closer and closer to the second largest one. So a recession is in the works at some point. What does that mean? And I don't want to have this just be like the sky is falling from a disruption standpoint, so I'll just give a couple of quick tips. When recessions happen, events get brought under scrutiny. So how do you prevent your event from being on the chopping block? Make sure that you and your clients define clear goals. And two things that I think can be helpful that we don't do enough of is facilitate the post-event application of what people learn, right? So you're going to learn some interesting things here today. What happens when you get back to the office? Forget it. They go out your creative side of your brain and you get sucked into when they get back to the office. Second thing is, as event organizers, we need to try to trumpet when people have a breakthrough as a result of something that happened at a conference. So if I'm PCMA and I want to counter the CVent Connect thing, in my newsletters, I want to share that people have had really interesting creative ideas that came from that conference. It's not enough just to say, hey, these people are doing really interesting things. Find out how they got inspired for that, and if it was at an event, we want to share that. Tremendous increase in outsourcing. It's a big part of what my company Grassroots does. We have a pretty big sourcing division. I'm not going to go into too many details. I know this is too small of a slide to read. I think it's from Smith Buckland. But with outsourcing increasing, if you're in-house, you need to think about what's the value of your department. And there's an exercise I've done in some offsites for in-house departments where we've said, pretend your CEO is spinning off the entire meeting and event department, and you're going to be an independent company, and you have to go and bid and compete for business. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are some of the hidden services you might be providing that your clients may not know about? And you have to kind of go through that existential exercise to protect yourself from being disrupted. And then finally, proving your value. I've talked about this in a number of instances. You have to build your personal brand, and it's not enough to just be a meeting or an event planner. You need a specialization. You need to be the planner who's good at social media, or the planner who knows wines, or the planner who's an expert in sustainability. You need to be a curator of ideas. There's a massively increased speed in which there's new developments and ideas out there. You want to be the person in your company that clients go to learn about the ideas and to get those ideas valued and vetted. And you want to put all this together so it's in a narrative for other people to share about you. Turning to politics and security, okay, the rise of nationalism is not good for our business, okay? I don't care who you voted for. There is no way this has a positive impact on the meetings and events business. When people stay local and they don't look at themselves as part of a global community, attendance goes down and meetings suffer. This is a quote from the CEO of Marriott about the concern that it's a sense of not being welcome in the United States. We know about the immigration ban. I think an even bigger impact is this laptop and tablet ban. So this is at 9 airports in the Middle East where you are not allowed to bring your laptop or tablet on the plane with you. You have to check it in luggage. There was a significant rumor that the TSA was going to roll that out to all European inbound flights to the United States. They announced, I think yesterday, that that has been postponed for now. But if that happens, I could tell you right now, I travel a lot and I work on the plane on my laptop. And if I can't do that, I'm going to significantly rethink whether I'm going to be able to attend an event if it's a long flight. The impact on all this so far, Emirates Airlines has cut 25 flights a week into the United States. Okay? They went from Boston, Seattle, and LA, 2 flights a day. They cut that to 1 flight a day. The other cities from 7 flights to 5 flights. These aren't just tourists. This impacts our business. In New York City, where the visitor rolls go only in one direction. Every year in New York City, it gets more crowded on the streets with tourists. This year, NYC and Company adjusted their projections of international visitors from a 400,000 person increase to a 300,000 person decrease. So these impacts are starting to happen and we're going to feel them. Pivoting away from the immigration thing is guns. Guns at events, whether it's terrorism or some type of domestic activity. But I want to just tell you guys, if there's a shooting at the Consumer Electronics Show or the Toy Fair or some other big event, that's going to significantly impact our industry. We need to be prepared for that. So this is just sort of an interesting thing I do. If we had more time, I would ask for people to guess. But these are the number of states that allow open carry of handguns with permits, without permits, and long guns. Okay, in New York, we're not so exposed to this, but this is an increasing trend, and we're going to need to be mindful of this because you might have situations where people are bringing guns into their events and they're openly on display, and that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. So I'd encourage us to continue to be mindful about this. Discriminatory state laws. If you are working in Texas, right now there is a bill making its way through the Texas state legislature, which is going to be one of these bathroom bills, which is going to be viewed as discriminatory to the LGBT community. If you are working in Texas or you're thinking of planning an event in Texas, this is going to have an impact. It's not easy to move a big conference or a citywide event. So you need to see what's going on at the state level on these laws. Now, there's two different kinds. There's the bathroom bills, which basically say you have to use the bathroom of the gender on your birth certificate. But even worse, I think, or broader, are these religious freedom laws, which basically gives businesses the opportunity to not serve customers if that customer's beliefs violate their religion. Most of this tends to fall in the LGBT community. But we need to be mindful of it. You don't want to just have a law be passed and suddenly you have to scramble to change where you're hosting your events. We need to be more advocating in terms of our interests on the state level on this front. All right, so experiential. Here are a couple of, now that we're away from the really kind of generally negative stuff, the things that I think are going to be dramatic trends and opportunities, and again, I'm focusing on a lot of things that are not necessarily tech. Wellness is huge. Dreamforce, which is the multi-day user conference for Salesforce.com, had an hour of wellness, I think 2 years ago, and it was so popular they expanded to a half day of wellness. Here's where I think the opportunity is in a positive way. A lot of companies are focusing on having it be a pleasant place to work. They're focusing on the work-life balance, and they're focusing on general wellness. They're bringing in meditation people, they're bringing in yoga instructors, et cetera. If you can build this into your event, and then people who are considering attending it can then position it as, I'm not just going to learn and network, I'm going to go and recharge my batteries. I'm going to go and be well. I'm going to go and be mindful. I'm going to, get into that Zen place. I'm serious. That's a box that now can be checked on the HR side. So facilitated matchmaking. I love the idea of the walk in the simulated rain at the C2 event. And if you want to see a really innovative conference, go look up C2 MTL. There's a ton. There's like 15 examples like that. This is one that I think is a game changer. There are apps out there, and we're going to start getting into this in our company, that give you the ability to find the 2 or 3 people at a conference that you really, really want to meet, right? So if I work in pharma and I'm thinking of reorganizing my meeting department, I want to find the 1 or 2 people who are in pharma who've already reorganized their meeting department. And if I can do that through an app at a big conference, suddenly that's the entire value proposition of attending. It's not necessarily to meet 5,000 people. It's to be able to get one-on-one with the 1, 2, 3, 4 people that are going to have a really big impact. The way this works is you can put in an offer. I have experience in X, and it can be really specific, and then you have the ability to have people look for that, find that, and meet. And the ones that do this well set up a matchmaking zone so that it promotes it and it becomes a public type of a place. People walk by, they see people meeting and making those connections. This is something I haven't seen apps being used for, and I think this is a dramatic opportunity for us. Every event has an event app, right? I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't seen an enormous amount of breakthrough ingenuity on how these apps are used. I think this is an opportunity that is not being capitalized on. So here's how this would work. Basically what you're using the app for is the ability to communicate on the fly with every single person who's attending the event. So let's say when we came out of this meeting, everybody was asking Q&A with me about the bathroom bills. Let's just, for argument's sake, and that becomes a hot button topic. Rather than the organizer have to wait for next year to set up a session on that when it might not even be relevant, they can come out of this and shoot a message to everybody and say, we're going to have an extra 15-minute micro session out in the hallway for anybody that wants to talk more about bathroom bills. Now the people who are at the conference have the ability to kind of learn more and dive deeper into whatever it is that they're interested in. So when I got off the stage, Liz could come to me and say, can you do 15 minutes on the bathroom bills? She hasn't said that, but if she did say that, we could go meet in a corner and suddenly everybody now gets more information on what they want. This is the ability to do programming on the fly, and the app is the distribution vehicle for it. Second to last thing, so online learning has exploded. Well, at my last company where I worked, the Event Leadership Institute, that's what we did. And it really gave me the ability to think about where events differ from online learning. And if all you're doing is disseminating content, if it's a person that's just standing up and spitting out lots and lots of content information, you are missing an opportunity. And at some point, someone's going to come along and say, let's just do this online. It's a lot cheaper. People can go at their own pace. They can do it at their own schedule, et cetera. So you have to think, what can we do in person that we can't do as well or at all in an online environment? Facilitating those connections, like I talked about with the app, is one. Making things engaging and interactive is two. And then what they're also seeing is, and this is the last trend, is creating an experience, really creating an experience. And you're starting to see what's called the festivalization of events. This is not going to be for every event, but they're making events into these happenings. It's not just about session, network. They're having like a mishmash and a mashup of a lot of different things. If you'll notice, South by Southwest calls itself a conference and festival. C2 is a conference and festival. Airbnb's Open is billed in the same way. Here are just some examples of what they put together. They do have hackathons, pitch contests, concerts, master classes, labs. C2 has done a really good job of making it feel like a happening. It's not just information that's being disseminated. You go there because you don't know exactly what you're going to get, and you know they're going to work to create something really, really not missable. So that's the festivalization of events. Depending on time, where's my, good, 1 minute? All right, we talked about live streaming in the last session. This is a potentially huge disruptor for good or for bad, the opportunity being that somebody can be basically jailbreaking your content as an event organizer without your permission. We know about the positive benefits of live streaming. Drones, I'm not exactly sure how they're going to be disruptive, but I will tell you there are regulations popping up everywhere. I think Don Berger's coming up after me. I think DC's a no drone zone, right? No drones are allowed. But there's a great site, knowbeforeyouFly.org, which will tell you all you need to know about the rules for drones. VR, virtual reality, we've talked about site inspections. That's the obvious low-hanging fruit. Here's where I think the disruption might come, is the ability to view live events through virtual reality goggles. So last year, the NBA did a deal. In my notes, I have the name of the company, but they had virtual reality live streaming of an NBA game. So picture putting on your goggles and having this virtual reality experience, but you're at your home. When people can do that for big events, that's going to be a dramatic competition for attending live. Integrating data. These are big game changers, especially the ability to integrate with a CRM system at an event. If you're have somebody come and checks in at the reg table, it'd be great as a salesperson to be able to get your phone buzz. So-and-so has arrived. Tying in the data so that if you're bookmarking a session on the app, it may suggest other people that you might be interested in meeting with. All right, so that was like 45 minutes of stuff compressed into about 15 minutes.
Wonderful, though.
All right, I'll take wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Can we give him another round of applause, Howard? Thank you so very, very much.